Hello, everybody. Oh my goodness, I am celebrating big time. Welcome to the very first episode of many of the Entrepreneurial Biome, nurturing the ecosystem of business, body, and living. I am Heather Nichols. I'm the host of the podcast. A lot of times it'll be just me. Sometimes I'll have guests, and I look forward to fun people come and chat with me here. Areas of interest and walks of life. I am just absolutely thrilled. This podcast is a culmination for me of, I guess, 25 plus years of work, study, training, education, experience, living, creating, being. And I'm so happy to be putting it all together. How do I even begin? To me, this podcast is really a place for conversations for people who are entrepreneurs and creatives that really get that, or who are looking, maybe you get it already and you'd like more, or maybe you just kind of know there has to be an easier way. Like there has to be a way for me to be able to have like a really amazing experience in my body, with my body and my stress levels and all of that in my life, and a lot of relaxation and ease in all of those areas, and also have a really thriving business and income. And it's so there's going to be a lot of body centric conversations in this podcast woven through, and some of them will probably be not so body centric, but I'm really fascinated about to have conversations that are about a really different way of creating. And for me, I started my very first business when I was 27. I was fresh out of graduate school. I had gotten a bachelor's degree from Cornell University in human environment relations, and in the College of Human Ecology, which was all about studying how people interact with their environment. And I focused on how people interact with their architectural environments. So I did a lot of facility planning and interior architecture and designing spaces that actually really acknowledge the people that were using them, and making life easier for them, and facilitating the activities going on there. And I thought it was super interesting. But I realized I didn't really want to work as an architect, and ended up getting a master's degree in social work in 1997. And in that time, I went to the University of Denver, and I moved to Boulder during that time, Boulder, Colorado, which is really like a mecca for healing arts and all things body yumminess. And I got really turned on to, I realized that there was such a thing as dance therapy and body-centered psychotherapy. And I had been a dancer my whole life. I was always a body person. My mom lied when I was 2 years old to get me into a ballet class that you had to be 3 for. And thank goodness, thanks, Mom. Because I started dancing and doing gymnastics and diving and cheerleading and all these things with my body. So I've always been very active, and like chairs never made sense to me, and sitting still never made sense to me. So I finished with my graduate degree, and I was like, work in an office? I don't think so. I don't want to be sitting. That was partly why I didn't go into facility planning, is because I didn't want to work in an office. I didn't want to work in like an architectural firm. I just didn't. I was like a 9 to 5. That sounds horrible. Sitting in a cubicle, that sounds horrible for my body and for my life. I'd like to be way more free to move about the world and move through my life. And so I'm so grateful, because my parents raised me really to be an entrepreneur. And so they empowered me from a very early age to know that I could do that. I could do anything that I wanted to do, and I had the resources to do it and the support. And they just really like cheered me on with what I was going to create. And they were curious with me too. And so, so I finished with graduate school, and I began a private practice as a somatic psychotherapist and a dance therapist, movement therapist, body-centered psychotherapist. I was also teaching a lot of mind body movement classes and dance classes and yoga classes. I owned a studio. I had a huge staff at one point, a big studio, big space, lots of different things going on there. So I realized early on that, to be doing what I wanted to do in the world without having the cubicle thing going on, that I needed to become an entrepreneur. And that was not what I didn't realize that was going to be part of the deal. So I started getting a lot of business coaching, and I did everything my coach told me to do. It was like, do this, do that, do this, do that. Okay, I would go do it. But it all seemed so boring to me. And it wasn't very fruitful. It wasn't super successful. And it kind of like things kind of just plodded along. And I was in this world of bodies and movement and healing. And I worked a lot with trauma. I was a trauma therapist and worked a lot with some really beautiful ways of helping people process trauma through their bodies and through their nervous system. And I loved what I did, but I kind of hated the fact that I had to do a business. Then I found this beautiful body of work called Access Consciousness about 13 years into that. And to my work as a psychotherapist and a movement facilitator. And I found Access Consciousness, and it was this really wacky, wonderful, weird, incredible body of work that was all about the energetics of things, and really looking at the energy of how we create and what we create and how we're showing up in the world and how we're showing up with ourselves, and including our bodies in that. And particularly there's within the body of Access Consciousness is a specialty area called the Joy of Business. And I grabbed that book and I read it voraciously, and I showed up at my first class with Simone Milasas, who is a beautiful lady that has inspired me so much. And I was like on the edge of my seat, and I'm like, oh man, if only my business coach knew this, way back when, I would be in a totally different place now. And so it was all these very pragmatic conversations and tools that nobody had ever had with me. I had never had. And I started to apply them right away, and my business doubled, and then it doubled again, and then it doubled again, and then it doubled again. And I sustained a 57% average growth rate of my income. I think it was for a 7-year period. It was really extraordinary what happened with my income. And it was like kind of unbelievable. I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. This stuff works. And it was about the joy of business. It was about, not the effort and the struggle and the work and the proving and the, ignoring your body and foregoing your body and, 2-week vacation a year kind of a paradigm. It was about business as the adventure of your entire life. Like your life is your business is your life, and including your body in your business, and including everything, including your children, including everything. Not because you're going to be working all the time, but because everything that you create is part of the business of your life. And I started to look from a really different perspective with that, and realize that that was for me. And I became a facilitator of the Joy of Business, and started to really dive into that, and have been facilitating those classes for about, I guess another probably 13 years. Yeah, it's been 10 years. So in the process, so fast forward to this summer, and I started also facilitating a lot of classes around bodies and energetic, like hands-on energetic processes for bodies that are really incredible. And and I all of a sudden I was like adding all these things to my life and my business. And that's actually a Joy business tool. What can I add to my life that would make it greater? You know, that what can I add to my business that would make it greater? Who can I add to my business that would make it greater? And as I was doing that, it was like adding more, adding more, adding more, adding more. And I was getting really excited. And there were all these things I wanted to do and all these things I was interested in. And it was like, yes, 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 yes. And before I knew it, I found myself, I did a lot of travel this summer, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was just so beautiful and so amazing. And I was all over the world. I was in Vienna and Prague and London and Armenia and France. And then I was all over the United States. And I spent about 2 weeks at home the entire summer. And so I got to the end of August and I came home and my body just kind of went like, hold on a second. Hold on a second, honey. We need to change some things here, you know? Um, and the thing is like what I was doing, everything that I was doing, I loved doing. Everything that I did, I loved to do. All the people that I was around with, like I create with the most amazing people. But my body really started to say, give me this really clear information of like, hey, you don't have to be so, you know, like you don't have to do so much and you don't have to pile it on and you don't have to be gone all the time. And my body was like, I would really like something different here. um, and so this is the beauty of things, is that our bodies facilitate us into the next thing that is even greater than what was before, if we are willing to be that different, if we are willing to listen to them. And my body has taken me on this journey since that moment of, and it was like in that moment, my whole business kind of like completely changed. My main like the person that was like running my business with me decided it was time for her to leave. So it was a massive reorganization going on in my business. I didn't really have a sense of what I was going to create in the future, in the short-term future. It was kind of like, I'm not sure really what's going on here. But I knew to lean into it and I knew to listen to it. And my body was just like, you're not going to do that right now. Like, hold on, honey, you know? And I started to realize that there was a lot of neurological activation in my system. There was a lot of this sense of like, I've got to create, I've got to create, I've got to create. And, you know, part of it was I've got to create more money because I started to enjoy creating more money all the time. And then it became, I didn't even realize it. It was very subtle, but it became this thing of like, okay, now more, now more, now more. And, but I started to create from this very, like sympathetic place in terms of the nervous system. Like our sympathetic nervous system is all about, it engages in times of fight or flight. That's our fight or flight response is our sympathetic nervous system activating. And this is actually one of the things I worked with as a therapist, was helping people who have had a trauma history begin to regulate their neurology and their brain chemistry, and as a result, like their whole lives, by learning how to regulate their nervous systems. Because a lot of times what happens in the event of a trauma is the sympathetic nervous system gets activated so that we can, you know, handle the threat. And the parasympathetic nervous system is there to calm us down and bring us back to rest and relaxation. But in the event of a trauma, that gets cut off, and the parasympathetic nervous system cannot do its job. The whole response has been truncated. It's been cut off, and the nervous system stays in sort of high alert. And I started to realize, wow, that there's some of that going on for me. And it was like I was diving into my technology and I was like on my phone all the time and on my computer all the time. And my body actually got to a point where my body was so contracted my arms and my shoulders, and from being on the computer, it was like there was no way I could sit down and be at the computer. And one of the things I had on my docket was to finish my book that is about bodies. And my body was like, nope, not right now. I'm not going to sit at a computer right now. Okay. So, body, what can I be for you, do for you? What can I contribute to you and gift to you? And my body just sort of pointed me in the direction of, I need to regulate a little bit. I need to have a different neurological baseline, please, that is so much more about rest and relaxation. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in the Joy of Business and Access Consciousness is that business actually, your business absolutely will thrive if you create it from a space of relaxation. There is an enormous amount of growth and thrival that occurs when you create your business from relaxation. But if you don't have the somatic of the body resources to actually relax, then that's a space that you're not going to be able to get to. And so that's kind of where I found myself. It was like I could relax in a way, but there was this deeper well of relaxation, this deeper sense of like deep, abiding peace and rest and relaxation that I don't like. Probably the last time I had it was when I was a kid. I was a single mom, and, when I got divorced and, my kids were very young. They were 1 and 3. So I also have a lot of experience of creating a business from the ground up as a single mom of very young children. And, they weren't with me all the time. They were with their dad part-time as well. But, when they were here, it was me. And so I learned a lot about creating my life in such a way and, taking care of, like, I had to take care of myself. Otherwise I wasn't going to make it. So I learned a lot about that in the process, and yet also, like, to the degree that I could, to make it work. And it was interesting because all of this, recent events that have transpired have been, they were in tandem with taking my very firstborn to college. And so my first son went off to college, and it was like when I said goodbye to him, it was like I had this sense of like I actually just, my body cried. I wasn't sad. It wasn't an emotional cry, but I said goodbye to him. And of course, I was like, I'm going to miss him, and I just adore him. He's a great contribution to me. And I, there was that piece of it, but my body actually cried. The night that I said goodbye to him, I was in a hotel and where he is, and I just laid in my bed and cried and cried and cried. And I just let my body cry. And a lot of times when our bodies cry, it is that they are releasing. A lot of times we try to attribute a story to the tears, and we do a lot of injustice to our bodies when we do that, because sometimes our bodies just need to release through tears. And when we add a story to it, we complicate things. So I knew to not do that. I asked, okay, so what is this? Oh, my body's crying. Okay, go for it, body. And as it just unwound, like it just kind of unwound and unwound some more and unwound some more. And as that occurred, it was like, I felt myself like stepping into a completely different space where my body was like, it's okay. Like, you've 20 years, between like pregnancy, and because pregnancy was very stressful for me and my body as well. So it was about 20 years. And it was like, we're doing something different now. He's out the door. He's at college now. He's going to take care of himself, and even though I still have one at home, there was something about the first one leaving that was like, okay, time to do this differently. And so it's been this beautiful period of going all the way back through the past 25 years of my life, of everything that I've done, of everything that I've created, of everything that I've learned, because I've learned so many things and I've studied so many things and I have so many resources, and a lot of them I kind of stopped using because I was just focused on what was in front of me, and really going back to so many of those resources and going, wow, gosh, there's this and there's this and there's this, and oh, and then remember this, and taking deep, deep, deep care of my body. And as they do, the podcast was born. It was like, oh, let's do a podcast called the Entrepreneurial Biome. And then all these other things started to pop up, and it was like, let's change this and let's create this. And this like wellspring of creation began to occur in my business as I like chilled out more and more and more. This is the biome aspect of this. A biome, the definition of a biome is a major life area. So it's an area of the earth where there is a major amount of life, and all of the life contributes to all of the life. Everything, the greatness of the soil contributes to the greatness of the trees, contributes to the greatness of the moisture, contributes to the greatness of the animals and the ground cover, and and on and on and on. And so there's this beautiful synergy that occurs in that ecosystem that is interdependent and interreliant, and where everything thrives when everything thrives. And our lives are no different. If you neglect one area of your life, everything is compromised. If you neglect your body, your business will suffer. If you neglect your body, your income will suffer. Your family will suffer. So many things will suffer. And my body has always been very sensitive and very aware. And so I've had the, sort of privilege, and also it's felt burdensome at times to have a body that, has had quite a few things going on. But I'm so grateful because my body's constantly giving me cues as to this is going to work and this isn't going to work. And one of the things that we play with in Access Consciousness, and I played with this a lot in my work as a somatic psychotherapist, is the consciousness of the body. Our bodies have their own consciousness. They are these incredible sensate organisms that have so much information and awareness and capacities, and they give us feedback all the time, but we tend not to listen unless we're in pain, which is exactly what happened to me. And I love listening to pleasure. Actually, I love listening to the pleasure of my body. I love experiencing pleasure, and I definitely am a self-proclaimed hedonist. Pleasure to me is like the gift of being alive, the gift of being on this planet, the gift of having a body is we get to have pleasure. And the pleasure of so many things. I'll go on and on about that another time. But we get to have all of these beautiful experiences with the planet and, our bodies and other people, and physical reality is a pretty cool thing, if we make it so. But there's a lot of ways there where it can feel very burdensome if we allow that to consume us and keep us in that neurological activation, the sense of fight or flight, the sense of survival, that sympathetic nervous system where we're like on high alert all the time because for whatever reason. And this is where like your needs maybe weren't met as a child, or, you've been in survival mode for so long, you don't know how to get out of it. And there's so many things that we'll talk about over these episodes where that affects your fascia, the network of incredible tissue, the fascial tissue, the network that wraps everything in your body, which can affect your structure, which can affect pain. I mean, there's so many different pieces of this that I will go into in ways that I can't even imagine now, because I wonder where we'll go. But it's so tied in. Our neurological health is so tied in. So it's sort of like having an area on the earth where you want to plant all these things, but the soil is desertified. And if the soil is desertified, you're not going to, you're not going to get very far, but you also can't, you can't remineralize the soil and, augment the soil. One of the ways you do it is by planting things. So it's this, very synergistic thing. And if you haven't seen the movie, The Biggest Little Farm, oh my goodness, I love that movie so much. It is one of my favorite movies. I just love watching this beautiful transformation of incredibly desertified soil, cracked, dry, like absolutely kind of dead soil, be transformed into a self-sustaining and self-propagating and perpetuating ecosystem that is completely thriving now. It's a farm in California called Apricot Lane, I believe is what it's called. So you can watch that and apply it to your life. Like if that farm was, your body and your life and your business, like where do you need to look? Where do you need to start? And one of the things that I realized for me was that there was so much going on, that it was so spread, so thin. Even though I loved everything that I was doing, it was like, it's time to really distill some things down here and get very clear for me on where am I going? What am I doing? What is the future that I desire to create? What's the world I desire to live in? And let's really go for that. And that was the genesis for me of putting everything together and going, okay, I've, there's so many things that I have to offer, and somehow they make sense to me in my world. Now, how do I make them make sense in the world and put them out there as a gift and an offering to people who are looking for this conversation? And that was the birth of the entrepreneurial biome. So I want to thank my amazing body for giving me the information and the tug, the constant pull and need and necessity really of like, hey, we got to do something different here. And in the episodes to come, we're going to dive in lots of different things, lots of different conversations. This is just sort of a like, hey, here we are, here this is what it is, this is who I am. Or just a teeny glimpse into that, because that's, it's all more unknown than it is known, which is the beauty of things. And I wonder where we can go from here. So thank you so much for joining for this episode. I am so grateful. Please, share it and do all the things. And yeah, I wonder what else is possible that we've never, ever considered. So thank you, dear friends. See you next time.